What's going on, guys? This is Decelation, and we got Brian.
What's up, peeps?
And Rhonda.
What's going on?
What are we working on today, people?
Well, it's my favorite time of the year.
Yeah, it is Brian's favorite time.
Rip the cooling system off again.
Yeah, we're redoing the cooling system. So thank you guys, one, to all the advice that you've given us. I also talked to some other people. Major shout out to Dave's YouTube channel. So if you guys haven't seen his channel, check it out. We did a little collab video that's be coming soon. But yes, we're ripping the cooling system out, and we're gonna tweak, massively revamp.
Yeah, I'd say I'd consider this a pretty good revamp.
A massive revamp of the cooling system. A brief little thing. One of the things that we were informed of, it's kind of hard to see in there, but the fan is spaced a little off of, like right here, it's spaced a little off of the radiator, but we don't have a fan shroud. So what we think could have been happening as well is it's sucking air around the radiator, not necessarily through the radiator. So we need to do a fan shroud for one. We've got a smaller upper radiator hose. Someone did mention us trying to clamp this down, but this is like -20 AN. It's not very easily to clamp down to see the pressure. But we did get smaller radiator hoses, -16 now. So that should increase the pressure in the coolant system, and we're going to throw a thermostat back in it. I got a 160-degree thermostat, so hopefully the combination of the three things, and I got a new fan because I don't know what the CFM on this fan is, but I got a nice little Mishimoto radiator fan to hopefully will keep this baby cool. All right, so we gotta do our favorite part, drain coolant. We've gotten quite effective at this.
Yeah.
We've got
way less mess than the first 8 times.
Yeah, we've kind of perfected it a little bit. So we're going to drain the radiator coolant and pull the whole front assembly. For the people that's kind of new, I don't know if you guys know how this whole front assembly comes apart, but effectively this whole thing comes off as one unit with just unbolting these bolts right here, and it slots in. So really simple. We're gonna get that done, and I'll show you all the goodies that I bought. Yay, bank account hates me. What else is new? Hey guys, so what we're doing, we're starting the draining of the coolant, and we're gonna start disconnecting the harnesses for the headlights, the turn signals, and the radiator fan. So we're going through making sure everything is drained out and ready to pull the front end off. And per our usual, coking and joking, having a good time. And once we get all the radiator coolant drained, we're going to disconnect the AN lines as well. See, I have to pull the intake off to get to the steam vent tube for the that attaches to the radiator. We undo the 2 bolts and we pull the front assembly off. It comes off all as one piece, so it's really simple. Now we're just disconnecting the radiator hoses, disconnecting the fan. We're taking the radiator out of the grill assembly. So it's 8 Allen bolts that we have attaching that. So now that we got it all out, it's easy to work on. Pull the fan off, and now we're trying to fit the shroud. The fan shroud, you can see I'm making marks right now. That fan shroud fits almost perfectly, but where the upper and lower radiator bungs that we had welded on, we do have to trim just a little bit around the shroud for that to fit. So you see Brian cleaning that up, making sure, getting it shaped out to where we can fit it and it sits flush. We're gonna still have to do adjust a little more, and Brian's just figuring out where we need to place the holes so we can just use the same studs that came with the radiator to mount the shroud, and then we're going to mount the radiator fan to the shroud itself. So right now we're just drilling the holes to make sure that we can align the shroud and it sits nice and flush. And we realize we gotta widen the holes because, you know, we're not a professional shop. Sometimes we have to make a hole a little bit bigger because we didn't line it up perfect. And now Brian is readjusting the part that we had to trim because it wasn't sitting exactly flat now that the shroud had the holes in it. And that's what you're seeing now. Brian is just making it a little bit wider. Alright, so now we're drilling the holes for the radiator fan. No, now we're drilling, sorry. We were widening the holes just a little bit more. Now we got the holes drilled for the radiator fan. We decided we're going to attach the fan to the shroud using riv nuts. So we're getting the riv nuts figured out right now, attaching the riv nuts. Make it really easy to take the fan on and off. And the way we had to fit the fan, some of the attachments of the shroud were under the fan shroud. We spun it around to make sure that it fit. And you can see that's what we're doing. We're checking for clearance to make sure that the nuts that we have attaching the shroud to the radiator aren't going to hit the fan blades. And nothing hit the fan blades. Everything was perfect. And now Brian and Rhonda are tackling the changing the upper radiator hose on the water pump adapter fitting. We found a company that makes kind of like a slipped bolt-on AN adapter from the water outlet on the water pump, so we can switch that over to whatever water pump we need. And while they're doing that, I am rewiring the radiator fan to connect with our system, and they're having trouble getting it fully tight, so I used a table clamp to keep the back part from spinning while I tighten the rest of it. So now that we got that, we got it nice and snug, and it wasn't leaking. It wasn't going to leak. Now it's time to refit the hoses. The lower radiator hose, there's no way to really get it attached while the whole assembly is on the front of the car. So we went through and attached that right now. And we also attached the first connector for the upper radiator hose because it's easier to do that while it's on the table than while it's on the car. And getting a wrench in there to make sure it's nice and tight. Now we reinstalled the radiator assembly back into the grill assembly so we can get ready to put it back on the truck. And this is what Brian, his expertise, he's done this enough times because we have to space it off of the connector for these grills. So he's putting the spacers in and screwing it in right now. So that's what him and Rhonda are focusing on. Rhonda's trying to shift up the radiator just enough to where he can slide the spacer in, and while he screws it in, make sure it screws in nicely. And once he gets them all started and threaded, he just tightens them all down. And now we're pretty much ready to put it back onto the truck, and then we can start making the new coolant lines. But first thing, we are putting in aluminum tape because there's some gaps that we were seeing between the fan and the shroud, and a very small gap between the shroud and the radiator itself. So we decided to take some waterproof aluminum tape, is I believe what I purchased, and this is to make sure that every bit of air that comes through the radiator goes through the fan. So the fan has a perfect seal, so it's pulling every bit of air that the fan is pulling as well, is pulling it through the radiator itself. It's just not trying to get air from somewhere else. So this is a very important step if you guys are going to be doing a fan shroud for yourselves as well. But yep, now that we got the tape on, back to talking to you guys. Welcome back, guys. Brian.
What's up, peeps?
Rhonda. So, we just finished getting the fan shroud, the new fan wired in and sealed. And this is to make sure that every CFM that this fan pulls goes through the radiator. So we got aluminum tape taped all around the shroud. I don't think I told you guys this yet. This is a fan shroud from a 66 Mustang.
Oh yeah.
64 to 66 Mustang, and this is a Mishimoto fan. That kind of fell off, whatever. I know it's a Mishimoto fan. But yes, this is a fan shroud to fit a 64 to 66 Mustang for a 16-inch electric fan. It fit perfectly on these radiators, so I know it works for the hot rod trucks for sure. Not 100% sure on the hot rods, but I think they have the same radiator. The only thing we had to do, we had to trim. I don't even know if you guys have to do this on yours, but since we have welded on AN bunks, we had to trim right down here for the
Return.
For the shroud, and right up here on the top part. And that's all we did to trim it in, and then we just lined up the holes and bolted it down. So the radiators do come with studs, like right here on these 4 points, and all we do is set it down. Once you got it, it'll sit flat, it'll bolt right on, and we pop riv nuts in to mount the fan. But yeah, that's it. So hopefully this will help with the combination of everything else that we're doing. Hopefully this will fix it. And we already put the thermostat in there. We swapped over the upper radiator hose connector to dash 16AN. I've started assembling the 16AN for the upper radiator hose, and we'll put it all together, and hopefully this truck will stay cool. Brian, you want to pull this radiator apart again?
No.
Come on, this is like the 17th or 48th time, something like.
There are a lot of things in my life I'm glad I became efficient at. Taking this system apart is not one of them.
I'm glad you've become efficient at it, Brian.
That's
This used to be a
us.
2-day process. Now it's like we got it done in a couple hours.
I watched some NHRA videos yesterday to get warmed up.
That's the spirit. All right, welcome back, guys. So now we're just slotting the radiator and cowl assembly back onto the truck. So we going through making sure everything's aligned, reattaching everything, the connectors for the headlights and turn signals, and start building out the hose. There I had to notch the relief hole that we made on the top of the cowl because the radiator cap, changing the size of the AN lines, it adjusted where the cap was actually going to be, so we had to make a relief cut to make sure that we can still take the radiator cap on and off without having to disassemble everything. And so now we're just measuring out how long the new radiator hose we have to make is going to be. With AN lines, you always want to wrap tape around them and cut in the middle so you minimize the fraying. We still sucked at it. We still had a decent bit of fraying. So you see we're struggling right now to get the AN hose deep enough into the fitting to where we can thread it on and make sure it works. And as you see it, same thing, it keeps coming out. We weren't getting the hose in there. We ended up having to, the outer coating, we had to trim it down just a little bit so we can, just the fabric, we left the metal mesh, but we had to trim some of the fabric back so we can get it fully into the fitting. Once we figured that trick out, worked no problem. Now we're doing the other end. And same process, trimming it back just a little bit, leaving the metal mesh because that's where the strength really comes from. And it's not really exposed because it's going to be inside of the fitting anyways. So just finishing up attaching that. And now that we have the hose made, we're going back and reassembling everything, tightening down the bolts that the cowl assembly slots into, and now time to refill it with coolant and check for leaks and run it and see what's going on, make sure that we're not seeing any leaking anywhere or getting it bled out. And Masha was coming in asking about dinner, usually saying when are we gonna have dinner. But yeah, and we got it going out. One of the things we ran into, we're going to discuss it, is we couldn't get it to bleed out because of the thermostat. Welcome back, guys. Brian,
What's up, peeps?
this is day 2. So what happened yesterday that we determined?
I think we figured out we had a super hot thermostat.
Yeah, so we did everything.
Whatever reason somebody needs a 220-degree thermostat, I think it's what we had.
Yeah, so what was happening, it didn't want to bleed out because we had put a thermostat. I had bought a 160-degree thermostat, but that one didn't fit into the thermostat housing. And the old one that we had in the truck, it was a one I had bought a while ago. It's supposed to be like a 170, 180, I believe, thermostat. And we were filling, this radiator hose was, this bottom hose had heat in it, and this one didn't have heat. And we were getting the engine up to, finally we got up to like 220, and then we started seeing equalizing of temperatures throughout the engine and everything, and it really started bleeding out at that point. So we're pretty sure that was like a 220-degree thermostat, not a 180 or 70 like it was supposed to be. So what we did today, that was like at the end of the night. We were out here for what, 7
hours, 7 hours?
Yeah, we were out here for a bit. It was hot. We were done. So we came back inside. We were like, all right, if I just got to pull the thermostat housing off and pull the thermostat out, now we're running without a thermostat. And I got the engine running, got it bled out, and got it to, it was getting at the point where the throttle response was dropping temperature, which makes sense. The water pump spinning faster, moving more coolant, which was dropping the temps. So sitting in the shop, like idle, I have that fan kind of blowing on it, but it's not like simulating like 60-mile-an-hour wind going through the radiator. But it got to like 185. It was at 190. It dropped to 185, and as I kept the revs going, I was revving to about 4,000 RPM, and it slowly creeped up to about 190 before I shut it down, and finally didn't see any bubbles coming out of our bleeder. So I think we got it working. The only real test is we got to street drive it. Ain't that right, Brian?
That is right.
So
Gotta go for a cruise.
Gotta take it for a cruise. And so it's back together. Didn't see any coolant leaks. Even the new hoses that we made, which was a fun time, as you guys saw. Yeah, so we got to cruise it. That's the only solution, or the only real test, a road test. And we're gonna try and get it up to about 50, 60 for a little bit to get air going across the radiator and see how it reacts to it. Welcome back, guys. Brian?
What's up, peeps?
So, what did we determine?
Well, it's still not cold.
No. So, here's a couple things that we've determined and potential solutions. One, this engine is probably making 1.8, 1.5 times the amount of power that the conventional water pump was designed to cool. So I got a high output water pump. Another thing that we also noticed was the truck is staying cooler than it was, so the things that we've done definitely helped, but it gets to a point to where temperature starts running away, and that directly correlates with when I have voltmeter in there and voltage drops to about 13.3, 13.2, which didn't think about this before, but we're running 3 fans and 2 fuel pumps on this stock alternator that I'm pretty sure I got from AutoZone, so probably not the highest of output alternators either. And what I'm thinking is, because this alternator is extremely taxed, the radiator fan, they're designed to run at 13.5 volts at a minimum. The fan slows down when this gets hotter, which fan slows down, it less cooling efficiency. So I really think that between these two things is what we're going. Oh yeah, we also kept running into leaks. Had to get another radiator cap. That's working nicely now. There's a sensor port on the other side of this coolant nozzle that also is wasn't screwed in all the way, so that was leaking. Another leaks that we had, we think this hose was leaking. We replaced that one. Yeah, we did some things.
We definitely did some things.
So thank you guys, they offered advice and help. It definitely helped significantly, everything we did. We are pretty pleased with it. So I think the shroud might have made one of the biggest differences, just based off of, after doing research and talking to a lot of you guys about coolant systems, that made a massive difference. So thank you guys, and yeah, we're gonna keep plugging away at this. I want to drive this car a lot. I want it to be able to stay cool, and I know I'm demanding a lot of it because we are in Florida and it is currently 94 in the shop. Yesterday it was 100 in the shop, so it's a bit warm outside,
just a tiny bit,
and we're trying to get this thing to stay cool even with that heat. But if it can stay cool in a Florida summer day, I know it'll stay cool when I beat the ever-living tar out of it. So that's where we're going next. That's what we are planning. Anything to add for the people, Brian?
and then the next one's a radiator somewhere, another radiator back there.
That idea did get tossed around.
I mean, the bed size is probably good for one of those dump truck radiators. Put like 8 fans on there. Disguise them, make it look like a big boomy bass system, but it's really just a giant radiator.
Yeah, just a massive radiator back here. Setup just going right here with 2 16-inch 3000 CFM fans. Like, just ridiculous. That may or may not have been tossed around. And a roof scoop on the truck. Dual roof scoops to feed right into it. Yeah, that might have been tossed around as well, because if you can't figure it out, go overkill. Why not? All right, thank you guys for watching. If If you like this type of content, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit like and comment down below. Tell us what you think. If you have any more advice, we're definitely all ears. Have a good one, guys. Peace.
Panning. Take these beeps.